Hey guys, I am here with John Vance, and actually, John Vance, what came first? Did you see that I was posting about Carol Balizet and you wanted to talk about alternative medicine, or was it alternative medicine and then I happened to be talking about Carol Balizet?
Well, I mean, interchangeably, but uh, obviously we can go into psychology of Carol Balizet, and I have some little, I guess, some facts I could share about alternative medicine. I will be careful with the words that I say because I know the platform that I'm on. But I can maybe from an alternative medicine perspective, and also people who are skeptical of the mainstream science, I can probably uh, put forth a more favorable view, um, even though it might not be uh, accepted as a credible, I guess, peer-reviewed source from a medical journal, um, from any mainstream uh, outlets or agencies.
Yeah, we can talk about science too because Carol Balizet. So anyway, before I do that, I did have Carol Balizet part one on here, but in case you're just tuning in now, I'm gonna come to I have a website. It's called carolbalizetcult.blogspot.com. Balizet is spelled Balizet. Carolbalizetcult.blogspot.com. You can see it here. Um, Carol Balizet was a nurse. She was a former nurse. And she actually had a very extensive career in nursing and went high up in rank. And she was a nurse for 30 years. And then she made an about face and she said that medicine was witchcraft and drugs were sorcery and surgery was satanic ritual and doctors were satanic high priests and sorcerers and things like that. So she totally turned against medicine. And then she started a home birthing movement where she said that you shouldn't contact health professionals, even if you see complications in the birth. It's a problem with the mind. The mother is not in the right space. You have to pray and get her into the right place. People have died from this, from medical neglect. Children have died. Carol Balizek got away with a child had been stung by 300 bees and she didn't bring it to the hospital. She just kind of oversaw it die. And she got away with that on freedom of religion and also the fact that maybe perhaps the child would not have been able to live. But her most famous book is Born in Zion, which proclaims that. But she was also a fiction writer, and I have a lot of her other stuff on here. But now, do you go so far as to say that how far against mainstream medicine are you? Like, you don't do you get spiritual about it like she did?
Not to that extent. I do have some, uh, I guess it would be spiritual, I don't want to say teachings that I would follow that also would, because, obviously if somebody who's stressed, right, I can put it in more concrete terms and more exact terms, whereas her terms are kind of convoluted, um, and and obviously superstitious. But I feel that it was part of that. I get the sense it was a grift a little bit to make money, because obviously there is a market out there for evangelicals. So I always, every kind of influencer or famous author or famous person in their field, you always have to have some sort of skepticism if they actually believe 100% of what they say, especially when you're trying to win influence and friends, right? So I think she had some sort of agenda using those convoluted terms. I've
Um,
heard.
mhm. Continue,
I've
John.
like.
Your microphone is a tiny bit. Is there anything you can do to fix your mic? It's not horrible. It's not
Oh,
unlistenable.
I'm sorry. I'll turn it up. Is that better?
No, it's a little bit crackly. It's not horrible. It's just a little bit crackly.
Oh, okay. I apologize. Yeah, I just turned it up, and I'll speak closer into it. Hopefully, that'll be a little bit better. But anyway, yeah. So like obviously, if someone is diagnosed with cancer and the doctor tells them that they have a year to live, um, so since that person believes that they only have a year to live, um, you know, a kind of a, I guess you could say, dread that goes over them. They could be depressed and they could die earlier than a year. But if they have like a positive mindset, be like, okay, well, you know, I'm gonna go, like, if they're gonna live like they don't have cancer, right? And they invoke, and this takes time, and this takes discipline as well too. If they take time and they take the care of themselves, just so say if they want to like plan a vacation to the Bahamas in a year from now, just like they're gonna plan like they're gonna live from that year, right? So once you do that, and then you just set it off, and then you go about your way. Maybe you tinker with it every now and then. Oh, maybe we'll go scuba diving. Oh, maybe we'll do this. Maybe we'll go see the volcanoes. I don't know. But so once you have that kind of positive mindset in there, what happens is there's peptides that your body produces, and that helps neutralize the cancer cells from not only to continuing to grow, but it also shrinks them as well too. Um, and so that I guess would be like my spiritual belief in this alternative medicine. Um, but of course, consult with a doctor. Disclaimer, of course, right? But I think the main issue is with this alternative stuff is because it goes against uh, the the big system, or like what we've known, what we've been taught of what is medicine, how to cure cancer, like chemotherapy, um, radiation, all that stuff. All that stuff is really hard on the body, and it kills your immune system. So yes, it'll kill the cancer cells, right? But in hindsight, if you kill your immune system, that gives it fertile ground for new cancer cells to grow. So, and then doing it again, the cancer cells kind of get like they evolve into kind of resisting that radiation of the chemotherapy, and so the chemotherapy couldn't work the second time. It's kind of the law of entropy, right? And the Rockefeller Foundation, like people knew this stuff like way back then, like in the 1900s, like the natural medicine and herbs. Like there's a lot of different herbal medicine out there. If you mix certain plants together, and you get a lot of different remedies like mucus from your lung, or cleaning out your parasites, stuff like that, right?
Well, John,
Yeah.
let me remove you and add you again to see if it helps your microphone. Hold on one second. Hello?
Hello, hello,
Hello?
hello.
Yeah, I think it's the same, but it's fine. Just keep going.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me okay though?
I can hear you. It's just there's a little bit of like a crackling or a little bit weird disturbance, but it's not so bad that you can't listen to it.
Okay, okay. Um, so yeah, so this is kind of my I guess my view on alternative medicine, and I guess the different figures. There are doctors that are actually taking their I forget the name, but their hospital or their doctor collegiates or whatever to court over the special the special virus. I'll just say that. And they have, and like, so obviously alternative medicine is, I guess there is doctors out there that are willing to lose their license in order to kind of push an alternative narrative as opposed to the mainstream um, when it comes to vaccines, and that's all I'm going to say. But um, yeah, hopefully, I've been careful enough with my words saying that. But anyway, but yeah, so that's basically, I'm just trying to give a more educated and more sympathetic view on to why people would go towards a person like Carol. But obviously, there has to be some sort of responsibility and discernment when you start using convoluted terms such as witchcraft or demons or whatever, and obviously that could either be a grift or that could just be kind of like this reactionary kind of irresponsible, irrational, um, I don't know,
Okay,
demagoguery, I guess.
what do you think about just mind science, faith healing, and that? Like in Christian science, they just say it's like matter doesn't exist, everything is mind. So if my mind, if I can think the disease away or pray the disease away, it'll go away. Do you think that there's anything to that?
Um, like in terms of prayer, like I have a different view on prayer when it comes to even like Christians and Muslims and Jewish people. They put an emphasis on the prayer and the act of the prayer and going or bending over on your kneeling down in your bed at night and having your hands together and say, "Oh, pray this cancer away, pray this cancer away." When you do that, that in itself inhibits that there's a lack of health, right? So it's kind of inverted what they're doing. They're actually harming themselves more by by putting focus on the um, the disease itself, right? And praying it. So in a sense, it's kind of like this like law of attraction, right? Like, if you just think it, right, and then it'll come, right? But you actually have to, in a sense, you have to have an action towards it. You have to, there's no wisdom in it. It's just, it's a first step to understanding something greater that can achieve you the results that you want, obviously. So I'm not necessarily totally against it, but at the same time, you have to understand that actually have to live it out. It just can't just be 5 seconds in a or every Sunday or prayer every night. Like it has to be lived out day in, day out. It has to be a discipline. You have to be very disciplined when you're doing these things, especially what Carol is describing. And so that's probably why you saw a lot of adherence, a lot of people who are like, okay, all right, I'll do that, right? And so, kind of like when you're doing when you're going against the mainstream, when you're going against mainstream like wisdom, there's this faith. I hate to say it, but there is this faith. I'm like, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? It's kind of a trial and error kind of thing, right? And we're kind of again like we humans, we want to strive for perfection, and we want to be the exact. We want to have the exact answers for everything. We want to build an algorithm that we put in a computer and you tell it, you give it data, and then it'll spit out an answer for you, right? And so we do live in that age, but at the same time, it's truncated in a way because it doesn't it suppresses information. I'm saying it could be it could be better. Honestly, the mainstream. I wish, right? Like I'm skeptical going to my doctor, like because it's just like they don't do due diligence. They only do stuff that will make them a profit. They don't look for the cure. They always look for the cure of the symptom, and then other symptoms will pop up, and then so they can sell you more drugs. And in a way, you get dependent upon the system, and that's why you kind of have an opioid epidemic or people getting hooked on, prescription drugs, and then eventually opioids, right? And so there is that issue with the mainstream science, and so people are looking at that and they're saying there's some data missing here, right? like sure, like they have a good sophisticated system, but it's just kind of like GPT. It's like if you try to do research on Chat GPT, you're going to you're going to find an answer that it'll think that you are looking for, and not actual articles. It's not as bad as Chat GPT is worse manifestation of AI from the controllers of the puppet masters. But what I'm saying is mainstream science is yes, it has good things. I'm not saying don't be a doctor or don't be a nurse, and you know, and don't follow protocol. What I'm saying is the field of it itself is that people go in it and they think I'm going to go in and I'm like you think of it like a cop, right? Cop goes in it, like goes to be a policeman to protect the community, to uphold moral law and moral values, and uphold the Constitution, and uphold rights and all that stuff, right? And then when he gets into it, he finds out there's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of bribery, and that people are, his colleagues are not in it for the same reason he is it. You get disenchanted. So you know what? I'm going to have my own community police force. And this is kind of what the same thing with Carol is like. She came into nursing thinking, okay, I'm going to come in and I'm going to make people's lives better. I'm going to extend their life expectancy. And I'm going to have all the access to all the information, to all the different remedies that are available out there. And then when she went in it, and then I'm just speculating. I forgive me, I haven't done a lot of research on her, but my speculation is because that she went into this field that she thought that she was going to have all the answers, right? Or most of the answers, whatever, right? To be perfect in good faith, right? But she went into the system, and then the system found out, oh, they're hiding information about this remedy or that remedy, and and then you kind of get into that loop, right? I guess maybe we can go into psychology of it. You get into that loop, you get down the rabbit hole, and then you just get crazier, and then the next thing you know, it's witchcraft, right? Where it comes from? Well, no, it's not. It's not evil in itself. It's just, you can say yes, it is corruption. Yes, they are withholding information. Yes, they are acting in bad faith at times, but in a sense, they are trying to help you, but it's just a limited context. So she felt like she couldn't really help people in that field because of that. So that's probably why she branched off and decided to start her own cult. And I'm not against cults. I understand people that get into cults, so I don't want to demonize people who get into that mindset. But that's basically maybe if I were to offer an alternative perspective, that would be. I hope that was clear.
Well, I think a lot of people are unhappy with the medical system, and they feel it doesn't do the right thing, and that it doesn't approach it correctly. Of course, I'm always going to be skeptical, because I'm like, if you're so right with all these alternative cures, why can't all these other scientists see it? Like, why is it like these alternative cures that you're bringing forth, or these alternative ways of looking at disease, why is it so hard for educated people to see what you're talking about?
Well, it's either A, that they aren't they're trained a certain way to look at like the medical society or medical school. They're trained a certain way, a certain premises, a certain, I guess, presupposition of solving, you know, curing symptoms, right? And so when you talk to them, well, no, what's causing those symptoms, right? And you say, well, what have you eaten? How's your exercise? Have you done a intestinal parasite cleanse? Have you do you do iodine? Stuff like that, right? But they don't ask that, right? And so it is that one aspect of, there are people who are acting in good faith, that they can't really see the forest from the trees, right? And then there's the other aspect of, I could just say, corruption or suppression. Uh, and I guess my evidence would be, the past couple of years where there was a big push of censorship of, um, I think I could say ivermectin, see, even when I think about it, right? And so this is why, like, you don't hear it in the mainstream as much, because there has to be it has to be really, really, really concrete, like slam dunk, like obvious. And when you get into this field, it's almost like there's different ways that you can solve different ailments, and there's always these different remedies. Like there's always a different way to skin a cat, as I like to refer it. And so, I mean, I would like for, like, the doctors that are protesting the sauce, like, they have concrete evidence. So I'm not like, they're actually going to court, and they're actually testifying, and they're holding people to account, because they're supposed to disclose to you what's in that sauce, right? But they're, most of the time they didn't, because it was emergency, or whatever, right? And so, it is coming into the mainstream. It's just that that's just the tip of the iceberg, and the iceberg is, the stuff I'm kind of getting into a little bit. But I mean, it goes for days. Like, there's different ways to cleanse your lungs. There's different ways that you can increase your testosterone, and like, it's a lot of, and I use it, but I mean, I could say I use this, right? It's anecdotal, right? But um, you could definitely put it in a way where, you could say this person said this, but this person said this, but then, it goes to a person like you to say, well, what's their credentials? Oh, they quit, you know, being a nurse or being a doctor, and they lost their license. So what is their credentials? And I'm just saying, because they were a doctor, because they were a nurse, they can see this, and actually that gives them more credibility in my eyes. Um, they saw a different alternative, and I actually, that's probably those people trust them. Like, oh well, you know, because they strayed from the corrupt system, that if they were in the system and they went through the rigmarole, and they saw, that it wasn't solving all the problems that they thought it would. And so, in a way, I would trust them way more than a doctor. But I would trust a doctor to some extent, but if I had a broken leg or stuff like that, like in a cast, you know. But in terms of like all like health and stuff, like I even heard of like home births. Like, people want to do home births now, um, and so, and then you mentioned that Carol does this as well, encourages this as well too, and so that's basically, my mindset of it. And obviously, you're going to be looked at as kooks, or or conspiracy theorists, or whatever. But
Well,
I think that I think that, it is going into the mainstream, and there's different doctors that you can source that are actually going to court right now, that are going against the establishment, because the establishment left a gaping hole of corruption, and malpractice. Uh, and so, there is a movement that is brewing, that is coming. And so, what we because there's always a fine line between, genius and insanity. And it's, sometimes you cross it, but sometimes you ride that line, and you get to somewhere that, people thought that, it was impossible, that people would accept. Like, even even if you're to tell, I hate to use this example, bad example, but say somebody in 1900, oh, we're gonna go to the moon in 60 years, right? They'll think, oh, you're crazy, right? And then it happens, right? I'm just explaining a phenomenon. So, like people who invent things and stuff like that, see, they're always ahead of the game. They always think ahead of the game. They always strategize in terms of like, okay, we got this information, so we can withhold some of it, we can do some of it. Obviously, there's going to be detractors, right? Because it's not going to be perfect. But how do we keep it going? How do we gain more credibility? Is the main aim, right? Of people accepting new information that might be contradictory to what their operating system is, right? I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah, I mean, no, you are making sense, and
Okay.
you are making sense, but I think there's a difference between like looking for alternative cures and actually kind of rejecting medicine altogether. And
Right.
because like she got to the point where she was telling people to like ignore symptoms of birthing problems and just pray it away. You know what I mean? Like, and
I
that's
would
not,
denounce that. Yeah, I would denounce that. Yeah.
yeah, like, because this is what's going on a lot. I just find it fascinating, someone who could be a nurse for 30 years and then totally reject medicine and go to the point of calling it witchcraft. Like, I want to learn more about her story and how she actually got there. But I think, well, oh, do you believe in flat earth?
Um, I describe myself as a globe skeptic, but I don't believe in flat Earth. So I'm skeptical of the mainstream model that they put forth of a globe Earth. And I guess some people say, "Oh, you're flat Earth," or by default, or I have flat earthers saying, "Well, why don't you just accept the flat Earth already, you infidel?" You know what I mean? It's almost like it's a religion at some aspect as well too. Like um, because there's this narrative in flat Earth theory that there's the firmament, and the firmament is mentioned in the Bible, and so it kind of takes its like this kind of religious underpinning to the movement. But I mean, I had some people explain to me, like the scientific aspect of like measuring light. Like obviously, like when you're measuring stars, or if you're measuring like the sun, like in terms of like they shoot out a light supposedly, and it's and from that they can measure that it's 93 miles away. But if you were to shoot out a light, right, with the Earth, I believe it's spinning 10,000 miles per hour, and it's going through the galaxy, 12,000 miles per hour. I'm not quite sure exactly, but I'm just trying to be trying to give you the model here. And so with that, if I were to shoot it out at the speed of light, and then for it to come back, the Earth would already be 15 minutes away from the original point when they shot out that light. And then they'll say, well, okay, I'll grant you that, like the globe Earth people. And they'll say, okay, well, what about if we shot it at a different angle? And I'm just like, well, how do you know the angle if you don't know how far it is? Right? So there's always an assumptive value when they're measuring like how far the sun is and how far the stars are. And so basically, like the reason why I can't necessarily call myself a flat earther is because they know as much as the globe people of Earth know on what's exactly up there. I mean, you can have the information to be a skeptic for sure, and that's why I call myself a globe Earth skeptic. But in terms of like actually, like again, like flat Earth, like same thing as like Christian praying. Like I get it, like it's a stepping stone, into getting into new information that you wouldn't consider before. That's good, but I would encourage people like, these flat Earth people. They don't know what's up there either. They haven't been up there either, right? And they don't know where the stars are, how far the stars are actually either. And so I'm kind of stuck in the middle of it. And so it can either be a globe or it can either be flat. That in itself is controversial. So that that's where I stand on flat Earth, and I think that the flat earthers do have a lot of good arguments in debunking the globe model, but in terms of offering a new model, they kind of fall flat, and there's not necessarily, there's a lot of assumptive value in that as well too. So it's I can't tell you if the Earth is a globe or if it's flat. Honestly, if I were to say, it's probably a simulation of some sort on maybe a flat plane of some sort. It's not exactly round, but maybe it's a little bit round. But you know what I mean. So that's where I stand on it. So yeah, global
Well,
skeptic.
what do you think? Well, first of all, okay, like you don't get like Jord does, where he says that geometry and astronomy are Freemason sciences and are like, I mean, you think they're real sciences, right?
Like in terms of like, well, in terms of astrology, like the
Not
different
astrology,
personalities.
astronomy.
Oh,
Astronomy.
astronomy. Oh, okay, astronomy. Yeah, all that is assumptive values. Like when they say like it's light years away, the stars disappear and come and go, but we usually see the same stars over and over again, right? And so we wouldn't be able to see that if we were going through the galaxy at, around the sun, and the sun also moving as well too. And so you would think like from that vantage point, you'd always see different stars, or you see a lot of different stars every night. But we always see kind of the main, like you can point out all the different stars. You can point out all the stars at most nights, right?
Yeah.
And so basically what I'm thinking, there's obviously some sort of, I think it's kind of irresponsible in a way to discredit astrology in terms of mapping out the stars and where they are, like the Orion's belt, the North Star, the Christmas star. You know, I think I would say that we kind of live in this like simulation where you have the sun and the moon kind of rotating like around. I'm not saying it's like a disc or anything, but like rotating around, and you know, and I'm gonna say that we haven't been to space, we haven't been on the moon. Like there's been really no proof that we've actually been on the moon other than what's on the TV. And so obviously I understand how people can get skeptical, but that skepticism can take it too far. And I think there's a way that you can curtail that and be like, okay, what information do we need to kind of prove that, prove our point, as opposed to going down rabbit holes and getting crazier and crazier. It's kind of like Stu Peters. Do you know Stu Peters? Like he gets
No.
crazy about like vaccines and stuff. Like you say, look, if you date somebody with the who got vaccinated, you're gonna get sick and you're gonna die. All that crazy shit. And then this is on this and this, and like they don't know either. They don't know what's in there either, right? So, both sides, the globe, flat, it's all assumptive values. It's all assumptive. Um, uh, it's all based upon faith in a way. They're both religions at the end of the day, and so there has to be some sort of middle answer towards, I would say, maybe gaining truth, but in a sense, there's always going to be new stuff that we find. So maybe like the best good faith theory out there, or hypothesis that because science is always changing. That's the nature of science. Is it's not supposed to be settled. That was the main thing. It was like the science is settled. How dare you even think about questioning it? And like, well, what's your hypothesis? Okay, let's test it out. Like that's what we're taught in school. Is you're supposed to test out a hypothesis to see if it's true. If this happens, this will happen. Okay, let's test it out. Okay, we'll have flask A, flask B. We'll we'll pour flask B into flask A, and if that happens, it'll explode. Oh, it didn't explode. Why do you think that was? Like this chemical, that chemical, whatever. So we need to do this, right? And then it's like basically trial and error. That's what science is trial and error, right? And you can come up to an answer, but that answer is there's always different variables they have to consider as well too. Um, so it's it could be an answer today because there's always changing. Like they'll say, oh, eggs are good for you, or oh, you have to eat a lot of grains, and then they go, oh, what, grains are a lot of carbohydrates. You know what, you should eat vegetables, right? Like stuff like that. So environments change. There's a lot of different variables. Uh, Stuff changes. So the science is never settled. So I would just encourage people to always look up and don't believe in something blindly. Always look it up, look up some information on it, and if it sounds true to you, you're not going absolute crazy, you can run with it and test it out a little bit, and then that's why you have debates, and so you have somebody with a different viewpoint than you, and you can test it out and see if it stands up to scrutiny. And so that's the purpose of debates and stuff like that. So that's basically my view of it. Sorry, I went on a tangent. I apologize.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
No, because Carol Balizet says that there's she names 7 systems that you have to escape: the banking system, the medical system, and science is one of them, entertainment. But science is one of them. She says, she's basically trying to get you out of the world system and basically trying to get you out and keep you safe. And I think that now that's becoming really important to people. But I am getting scared. I mean, the thing is that there is okay, I was just talking to the other day. Do you know in the cube, what's his name? Lucky? You know Lucky?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, Lucky doesn't believe in viruses. You know that?
Yeah, I'm not quite familiar with that theory. Viruses. Uh, yeah, I'm not quite sure. He didn't really expound upon that too much, but so you're concerned that you know that people are too free thinking and left to their own devices that they will go into
It's
crazy
not that
town.
they're too free thinking. I don't know that they're 100% being irrational, but I see in the dissident white right a tendency to be getting into very backward things like flat Earth, like no viruses, and things like what Carol Balizet would say, like no immunizations, and I don't think they're that far away from things like Christian Science, or getting to the point where they would say, well, the devil is trying to mess with my senses when I see illness taking over. It's not really illness; it's the devil presenting himself to me. I think if you were going to find that anywhere, it would be more on the right. And these types of thought patterns are growing and growing and growing. And I really think, number one, I think it's bad. It makes us look bad. It makes us look like shit, that we have this stuff going on. But also it shows a streak in the community, and just how rational is this community? How well put together are they? And, I understand they're into the occult, but, they're getting to the point. Also, a lot of it has to do with LARPing, in that, I was talking to ChatGPT about it, and she was talking about how, not ChatGPT, Pi.ai, and she was saying, well, yeah, a lot of fringe movements will often purposely take on absurd ideas in order to get attention, or to be ultimate rebels against everything, that they even reject the science, they even reject the medicine, and it's this final stand, and it's a statement, but that's a stupid statement to make, and it's a stupid hill to die on.
Yeah, it doesn't really go anywhere. Like, you have to have traction. And so I don't know, I read the book 50 Principles to Power a while ago, and obviously you want to say you kind of want to say provocative things, but at the same time you want to get people to you know, really think about it. It has to be a thought provoking. It just can't just be like, it just can't be so stupid that like anyone can dismiss it. It has to be a little bit more nuanced and uh, like to really grab somebody who is neutral, like who is not an adversary of yours, like to grab them to go on your side to win people and influence people. Um, these people, like the alt right, like I, it's just weird, honestly, that I'm lumped in with the right because I was like a left, like a, I guess you could say progressive or even communist. It's at one point like Marxist, kind of a little bit, like what was really materialistic. But I got away from the materialism; it's too dogmatic. But yeah, and so it's weird because now the establishment views like conservatives as a threat, but now there's this kind of this new wave of thought that that like there was like progressives that were that are into kind of alternative medicine and alternative ways or different ways of health um, and 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 challenging the establishment that way. And so I feel like I'm kind of from that ilk, but it's just weird that the system says that I'm far right, but if you talk to any of my peers, they'll say, "Oh, he's like lefty," or he's a NDP or whatever, right? And so it's just like, okay, so there's one aspect, there's one public opinion, like talking to boots on the ground people, they're saying I'm like a liberal or a lefty, and then if I go to the media, they'll say, "Oh, you're a far right conspiracy theory." It's almost like they're just trying to lump you in with these crazy people who say absolutely outrageous things just to try to discredit what you're saying. I'm sure like the doctors that have lost the license that fill out all these court documents for evidence, I'm sure they have to face that credibility um, angst as well too, or that somebody that they associate themselves with. But in a way, what you say is true. Truth will always win out over falsehoods, and so that's why that's why I always search for the truth, right? But sometimes it gets co-opted. But another thing too, you have to think about, like, when you go into this, like some of them are feds too, like they just say outrageous things that so that they say, hey, like you're in this room with this one guy who said that viruses aren't fake. Now that guy could be legit or not, but like like that could be feds like trying to like push somebody along to go crazy, right? Like Louis, like I don't know, is he a Fed? I don't know, but that's kind of like a Fed kind of mentality. Like he goes in, like he has this room. Sorry, I'm going on a tight side tangent, but he just goes like, oh, I'm here to kind of see how crazy that you'll get, right? But you never know. He could be recording. He could be working with the CIA. He could be working for CSIS. Could be working for the FBI. You never know with these things, right? And so that's the thing you have to keep in mind when you're interacting with someone. There is like legit detractors that are out there to try to discredit what you're saying, whatever your message may be. And so then they'll have on you, oh, hey, you're in this room with this one guy that said that viruses don't exist, and then they'll use that to discredit you, right? But and that's that's sometimes I have friends that like, John, why are you out here in the public? I'm like, well, I like debate. I like people that have alternative views and sharpen my mind and get me to articulate better. So I view it more as a net positive as a net negative. But obviously, there is defects to always being public all the time, or most of the time anyway.
Well, yeah, but we're more honest, and I think people take us more. We have more credibility than people who aren't public, and people who aren't public, it's because they want to say things that are so outrageous that they'll get banned, or that they'll get doxxed and they'll lose their jobs and things like that, or whereas if we're public, we tailor our message a little bit more so that we don't get thrown off the internet and things like that.
Yeah. And that's why I don't believe in free speech, because you just basically just get people who are just so um, unaccountable for what they say. Like, I guess you could say, well, you shouldn't threaten people, but at the same time, like, if there is like, there has to be a certain code of conduct too. Like people who like are absolute free speeches, like I don't think that they think this through. They just think, oh, like it's just another reaction, right? It's another reaction to like heavy censorship. So when you have one thing that sways one way really, really hard, you'll get a it's like a pendulum swing. You'll get it like back this way. And I feel like that's what most of the right is anyway, like the American Christian right and the alt right and all that. Like it's just a big reaction to, like these really atrocious, corrupt left people that uh, Democrats, I guess you could say, or liberals in Canada that are out to, undermine people's sovereignty. So you say that as you will, but I think that there is a way that you can have a middle message, and that can shine through. And if you keep going and not get too discouraged by it, or too caught up in people's psychology, I think as long as you have a goal and an aim, I think you're set to mind anything, you'll accomplish anything. That's just the old cliche. I understand that, but that's just that's the way I look at it anyway. That's and it is it's not bad like to go in there. I just feel like sometimes just women just shouldn't really be part of these intellectual movements, uh, like Carol there. I just think they get like too emotional, and they can't abstract. They can't differentiate between abstract thought and emotional thought. And so maybe that's why Carol, because she's a woman, that she got really amped up and she started using convoluted terms. So that's another theory too. Right? So that's another thing. That's another criticism I have of women participating. Women can be part of the movement, but they have to be really limited. They have to be segmented. They have to have their own room. Just like in the mosque, like you have women who pray and men who pray. Like obviously, there's obvious reasons for that because it's distracting. If there's men and women around, you can't really focus as much. Even in the Catholic schools, you had all boys school, all girls school. Some people will say, "Oh, that's oppressive and that's horrible" or whatever. Or, it's kind of this liberal attitude, like, "Oh, why don't you just let kids explore each other?" No, no. I think boys did better when they're around boys, and they actually accomplished more as opposed to being distracted all the time and getting sidetracked. And you can kind of see that in the cube with those two women. Like they obviously have nothing of value to really contribute, but they keep detracting the conversation. You can't have any deep fucking conversation because they throw ad hom attacks, and they give bad faith arguments. Then they go off topic really well. You know what I mean? So a woman's mind, women honestly stay in the kitchen, or just stay away from men. Like let men have their space. And that's just basically my uh, view on that.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference, and I noticed that women tend to not like things to get too deep.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I noticed that a lot, that women like to interrupt things that are getting like really serious. I have noticed that from women, that they want to keep things a little bit more surface, a little bit more mediocre, you know what I mean? Because women, like they always say that men are either really stupid or really smart, and women are in between, right? Women are like they cluster around average. And I think that women like to keep conversation on an average plane and playing field that, like, everyone can understand and that they can understand, because I think they know that when you start talking very deeply, they don't understand what's going on, or they can't participate, and so they don't like that happening. Though I will say, on top of that, I think when women are deep, they're extremely deep, and they're deeper than men. And all of my idols, Margaret Sanger, Carol no I mean um Margaret Sanger, Elizabeth Dilling, Carol Valentine, were all women. And I think they were deeper than any man, but I think that, the average woman, no, is not capable of that degree of very profound thought and different thinking and unique thinking that men are capable of. And but I listen to powerful women, but I also think women are very dangerous. I think they're most dangerous. Everyone goes after me. I'm like, in warfare, you should go after the women and the kids. Fuck the men. They're the danger. I mean, they're the future, and women are manipulative, and they keep the society running while the men are out fighting, and like they're really a big problem. I don't understand, like, that's a straight man's value, like only kill the men and leave the women and children. Like, to me, that's not a very intelligent way to wage a war. Like, why don't you go after the civilians and have the army flood back into their own country to save their own people, like, and then die in the cities as well? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, that's an interesting viewpoint, because obviously, like in war, um, like liberal democratic countries are at a disadvantage because they're casualty averse. Either they're afraid to lose soldiers, or they're afraid to kill too many civilians where it'll look bad. But there is like a non-liberal morality that recognizes that, war is, there is going to be civilian casualties. Yeah, there's going to be innocent people who had nothing to do with the war. That they're gonna suffer. Like they're gonna die, right? And so, and you can't get caught up in this moral conundrum when you're at an all-out war with somebody of your enemy. Like you just have to go in. There is a objective that you have to face. You have to have linear thinking. You have to go, okay, we got to get to point A. So how are we going to get to point A? Well, we got to get this flank. We got to flank out this tank. We got to, have people underground so they don't see us. We got to go here. You know what I mean? Like, you have to have a plan. You can't just think, oh, but then, oh, what if we kill this civilian over here? Or, you know what I mean? And then you're just impeding your own progress.
Well,
Like,
the thing is that I read I read a lot of Jewish advice on things, and in New Gentiles, he's a Jew that's trying to get Gentiles to think like Jews. And he says, if you have an enemy nation, you can't break it up into individuals. You can't sit there and say, well, there's individuals inside that nation that don't think like this, and I need to worry about them. You have to go after the whole group. And that is true. Like, everyone's like, I got into a fight with these people the other day, and I was talking about, Muslims being anti-gay, and they're like, oh, you're making you're making a big sweeping statement, but the ideology of Islam is anti-gay. I know that there's gay Muslims, and I know that there's Muslims that are okay with gay people, but the ideology itself, you can't deny that it's not anti-homosexual. And if you call yourself a Muslim, you're basically putting on that collar. You're putting on that collar of Islam, and you're feeding Islam. Just by saying you're a Muslim, you're feeding Islam.
yeah, it's something that you know, I I do struggle with them privately, because there is other issues as well with Islam as well too, that like it talks about, like if you're not an Arabic speaker, you're not a real Muslim. Like, if Arabic's not your first language, or if you don't pray this way or that way, your prayers are not to be accepted. But it's almost just like religion. It's just in itself is kind of just this vacuum that it, it people latch onto it, and it's kind of just like it's just like a sports team. I think there's like a sports team, like, I'm team Christian, I'm team Muslim, I'm team Jewish, right? This is what I stand for, and we'll fight for it. And part of what Islam stands for is that they are anti-homosexual, and so like, there's people that like, I that do express it a lot, and there's this good Muslims, but obviously, as a homosexual, you view, I guess, all the Abrahamic faiths as kind of adversarial to your interest, your genetic interest,
Yes,
because you're homosexual.
I view them as all adversarial, and I view them as my enemy, and I view them as my enemy totally. And I always say, if you're a little bit homophobic, then you're totally evil. And so, you know, that type of mentality wins in the end. And I mean, obviously, that's why the Christians were never able to thwart the Jews, because the Christians have this kind of forgiving, holding back, not being vicious, not getting revenge, not these types of things. And the Jews are into all of that. And, the Jews are more malicious, vicious, more vicious. And, that's why so few Jews have been able to hold on into Christian countries, even though they've been pogromed so many times, because they don't follow that same, mentality of just turn the other cheek.
Hmm.
The turn the
So,
other cheek.
so as a, how did you come to militant homosexual? Because, sorry, I've just been away from these circles for a little while. Is that last time you were kind of a Hindu and you're kind of falling away from it, and then you were talking to Claire, and then I noticed you were kind of you were expressing some frustration with homosexual or heterosexuals, and so um, what made you kind of push over the edge? I guess.
I just got done with. Well, what really pushed me over the edge was that I got pushed off the last channel for being gay. I was on a Christian channel talking about the no hide laws, and they didn't want me on there anymore because I was gay. And I'm just like, fuck this. I'm not even gonna try working with these people anymore. And nobody felt like working me anyway, so I didn't like lose anything. And there was just all I deal with all day is homophobia. Either people who aren't homophobic don't talk to me, or just everyone who talks to me is homophobic. Everyone, it's like it's always there. And I think all heterosexuals are a little bit homophobic. I do. I think that all heterosexuals have a grain of homophobia in them. I think it's their first instinct. I think they have to be kind of conditioned out of it. But conditioning is scary because it can be reversed, and it's not real. It's not based in every generation needs to be conditioned all over again. And there's always going to be people who resist that conditioning. And um also the way that homosexual agenda is being handled right now, there's going to be a big backlash to it. Homosexuals would be respected if we were aggressive, if we were violent, if we were militant, if we formed our own military organizations, if everyone knew that we were like this kind of secretive cabal that controlled society and did all like fly by night operations and stuff like that. If we were doing all that kind of stuff, we would have so much respect. We would have so much respect.
I do agree with you. Like, I do see kind of, I do see some videos sometimes of, they were doing some drag queen dancing with children, and there were people calling out like, "Hey, you're dancing in front of children. Don't you think that's wrong?" And they were very, how could you say, they were very kind of ashamed that they were doing that they were pointed out, and they were like trying to hide it really bad too, like they were hiding the windows, stuff like that. So there is this kind of notion that homosexuals, not all, but it seems like a lot of pedophiles seem to be homosexuals. And
Well, no,
so
that's
how do
only
you,
because people bring that up all the time because they're like, you're only 3% of the population, but you make 40% of the rapes. We're way more than 3% of the population. A lot of those rapes are being done by men who are in the closet. So whenever, statistics don't show how many gay men there are. Their bisexual men go through the roof. I could sleep with a married man every day of the week on Grindr. Any gay man could go on and sleep with a married guy who's married to a woman any day of the week. There's millions of crypto homosexuals out there. We do make up 40% of the population. That's why we're doing 40% of the rapes. It's not, it's not like this totally it's like, and also like, okay, you want to talk about, what about priests? What about Christian priests and how much they rape children? What about that disproportionate amount of people in religious communities? I was raised Jehovah's Witness. They not only do they rape children, they protect the people who raped them.
Oh yeah, there's definitely I'll side with you on that. Like there is Hutterites that are that do take advantage of women in their and Amish people, I guess, that do take advantage of women in their colony as well too. So um, you know, it is men that do create that do a lot of the sexual assaults. So I think it's like close. It's well over 90% of men do sexual assaults. Either it's to another man or it's to a woman. So I guess homosexuality. I guess because they're. I think that homosexuals tend to view sex as kind of a laissez-faire thing. Like you don't really have to work as hard as a homosexual to get sex as you do a heterosexual
Yeah, well, a
in a general
heterosexual
sense.
man, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess homosexuals they feel that, and then you could also apply it to people of power, like a priest or like a person who's the head of who's the lord of the Hutterite colony or an Amish colony or whatever, right? Like there's always that power, and they want to exude their power, right? And so there is that aspect of it. The other aspect of it is, well, with the homosexuals is that like they feel like the line's a little bit blurred, so it's not as much of a taboo as like a heterosexual who would has to work for sex and has this kind of moral kind of Christian moralism in their head, mostly internalized, right? Which can be to their detriment most of the time, actually. Muslim view of sex is different than the Christian view, but yeah, the Christian view can be really, really detrimental to even heterosexuals in themselves at times. Um, but yeah, that's basically my take on it. I mean, I get what you're
Yeah,
saying.
I
Like,
know. I mean, you face it all the time, and people talk about homosexuality and pedophilia all the time. And heterosexuals in the alt right don't want to ever talk about. First of all, I mean, pedophilia is the rule amongst heterosexuals outside of the Western world, or at least it was. In
mhm,
Africa, India, in China, and stuff like that. Pedophilia, marrying 11, 12, 13-year-old girls was just what was
mhm,
done. You know what I mean? It's just what was
mhm,
done. And so you had a whole culture of pedophilia. And so to come to us who are way more than 3% of the population and say, look at all these rapes you're committing, it's like, I'm not going to really fall for that or take that seriously.
mhm. Okay,
But
I
um
understand that. I wasn't trying to be bad faith about it. I was just, making a point.
no, no, that's no, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, bubblegum is in the and he's been very anti-Christian. He's been going against Christianity in here,
Mhm.
saying that it's bad for men and turns them into soy boys, which it does a little bit. Eventually, it does that. It didn't do it at first, but over time, yes, that's kind of what it leads to is that level of that level of tolerance, right? Because it's based on love and it's not based on law. And what is love and turning the other cheek and letting the prostitute live and these different kinds of things.
Okay. Um, are you okay? So your society, how will you attract? Because I guess heterosexuals are known for kind of infrastructure job, like men specifically. How are you going to attract heterosexual men into your hypothetical colony? I guess.
No, I'm not. I'm not going
Okay.
to. I'm starting slow and I'm just going to build a slow cult that slowly moves. I don't expect to have power in my lifetime.
Hmm.
I expect to lay something down that has the power to kind of take over, but no, it would have to be done without them. No, I mean there's no way to coexist with them or to work with them or anything like that.
Okay.
There is no middle ground, and that's basically why I think I will win, because I always say heterosexual, even the most homophobic heterosexual men have some. They all say, well, they're not all bad, not all gay men are bad. I have a gay friend, my friend's gay, and I'm okay with him because he's not like this. I'm okay with gays that don't act like that. Like, it's just like you'll never win, because you're it's never like no, none at all, 1000% no, you die if you do it, end of story. Like, that's how you win. That's why the Noahide laws, that's why people are going to like the Noahide laws, because they are no, end of story, no. You know what I mean? And it's just
Yeah.
the answer is no. And but nobody's going to win against homosexuality unless they say the answer is no.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Sometimes it's not always good to show your cards, but other times, like, that doesn't mean necessarily that you're weak or anything like that. Um, but I don't know. Like, so like you're gonna have an army of like homosexuals, and then you're gonna have like you're gonna start doing raids on communities or like take over
Well,
land
look,
or
first you have to build this army. So, I mean, right now I'm saying right now we have to rely on surrogacy. If we have to rely on surrogacy forever, this is going to be very hard. I'm saying invent artificial wombs. And then once you have artificial wombs, you can breed as fast as you want. You can build an army. You can breed an army. And I'm saying genetically engineer them so that they're best, brightest, smartest, most vicious.
interesting. Okay, a lot to take in. All right. Let's go back to this Carol. Sorry, I went off topic there. Anyway, uh, yeah. So now, do you think that um, now there is, I guess you could say there is like homosexual leaders that are like that are part of the alt right. Um, and
It has a lot of
do you,
homosexuals in it.
now, do you think that um, that it's just do you think that like the Nazis were like homosexuals?
Yes, I do. I think they were very
Okay.
gay. I think that they were
I,
all very.
you know what? There is this kind of homoeroticism a little bit in the army.
Yeah.
Um, and you know what? I actually kind of like I get it. Like I get it how kind of it's like a male kind of bonding technique. You know, like the women in the military is just laughable. Like all they're there for is this sexual release. They're not really good for anything else. But I think that you know, I think what Western armies have issues with nowadays is their public image as woke and you know accepting of lesbians and transgenders and all that stuff, right? But you know, like if you have like a militant, uh, you know, a homosexual or even a he could be homosexual, and if he's militant, that'll attract people to go to the army. And but I think people have a, a diverse view of homosexuals. They look at like kind of like people who like to dress up and prance around naked in the street and kind of act kind of disgustingly like you know laissez-faire, I guess. And there is that kind of view of homosexual, but
Yeah, the problem is that homosexuals come in extremes, and there's two extremes. There's the loud, flamboyant, feminine homosexual, and then there's that dark, brooding, hyper masculine, butch, of like fucking rip your head off homosexual. And it and usually there's animosity even in the gay community. There's look in the gay community, if you're an effeminate gay, you're automatically a little bit lower. The In the gay community, masculine men are valued more. It's like it's easier for you to get laid, you're looked up to, you're viewed as hotter. If you're even in the gay community, if you're like really femmy, it's viewed as like lower, lesser, it's harder, you have more prejudice against you, less guys want to sleep with you, you know. So it's even present in the gay community. You
I
know, it's like,
see.
like
Mhm,
having a super gay voice is like in the gay community, of course, you're accepted, but like it's not viewed as hot. It's not viewed as
mhm,
like as sexy. You're not like a sexy hot man. You know what I mean? You're more like a twink or a
mhm.
fag or whatever.
Okay. And heterosexuals are at a disadvantage because they have to attract a feminine species. That's maybe that's what they're. It's a different strategy from a heterosexual than a. But I mean, most heterosexuals are kind of taking a kind of a. It used to be kind of this patriarchy of no hold bar approach, but now it's kind of like this kind of gynocentric culture of women worshiping. Um, and there's this men say, I'm just going to go my own way. I just want to hang out with men now. I'm sick of these women. I don't know, but maybe that can lead to a kind of homoeroticism.
Of course it
Um,
does. Yeah, no, they
yeah.
say that, that's what Himmler said. He said this too much man on man stuff turns into gay. If you're too man on man all the time and that's all you talk about, then it starts getting gay. That's what he said.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this like extreme woman hatred is a symptom or is a sign of homosexuality. Not all I know not all men who hate women are homosexuals, but it is, this especially when it's mixed with insane homophobia. A hatred for women and homophobia is a bad sign when they're mixed together, especially, but even individually on their own, it's a problem and it's a signal that there's something not right.
Hmm.
Can you hold on one second?
Yeah.
Chama? 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 Just give me one second. I just need to call my husband. I just need to see where he is.
Okay.
Give me one second. Where are you? Okay, Tom, I'm not gonna have dinner. I ate too much and I don't want you. Do you have more food? Hello? Um, yeah. Um,
Do you want to wrap it up? Because my phone's
yeah.
about to die.
Yeah, sure. That sounds good. Let's wrap it up here.
Okay, I'll just make a final statement. So basically, my statement. So you kind of went off on a tangent there on homosexuality. It was pretty fascinating. But anyway, I think that when you are researching alternative medicine and stuff like that, you got to be aware of grifters and people who could possibly be federal agents that can really lead you down some paths that are not good, like some of her Carol's followers, and so I know I know individual. I don't like preaching individuality that much, but it is up to the individual in some way to practice some discernment. So there always is two consenting sides most of the time, anyway. When it comes to these cults, people say, "Oh, I got tricked," but no, it was you have to take responsibility. So I think that's the main thing that I could take away, have an honest view. But I'm also sympathetic to people who are looking for alternative ways to um, heal their ailments, whatever that may be. So that's basically my position today.
Okay, that's cool. So I'm gonna let you go. Thank you for coming by.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye bye.